Welcome inside the voice of college football, Arkansas. I am your host, Austin Robbie. We've got a jam-packed show, so the transfer portal has been going crazy, taking a little time off, and we're here to talk about it. January 16th, the transfer portal closed for the first time. So it was open for about 2 weeks. Lots of names went out there, lots of names chose schools, elected to go back or transfer to a new school. So we're going to talk about all of the transfer portal additions for the Razorbacks. A lot of guys on offense, a lot of guys on defense, a couple special teamers, and we're really going to break down who do you need to know, who's just a name, and who's a guy you're really going to see his name called a lot this upcoming season. So there's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of guys that we added. So many different dudes. I mean, we're going to break it down position by position, and there's so many that we could do that. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about some outgoing transfers, some guys that also uh, how much of a contributor was he last year? Is this just a guy who's hitting the portal that never even played a snap for us? We'll break that down. Also on the offensive, defensive, and special team sides of the football. I'll go over a couple positions in need that I look at after this transfer portal window has closed. Just look at some positions where I'm like, I still think we could use a guy. And right now, you can't uh, get into the portal, but there's still plenty of guys that are committing. We got a couple guys today. Miguel Mitchell came back, the safety originally out of Florida, and so lots of names still being thrown out there. So we're going to go over a lot of those, but we'll start on the offensive side of the football. And before we do that, just want a little plug for the show, and that is pull over to vocfb.com/shop. When you go there, there's going to be a team drop down. Click Arkansas. There's going to be a lot of different options there for you. So if you're looking for some merchandise to help support the show, just check out vocfb.com/shops. You can check out, we got a lot of different shirts, a lot of different cups. So check that out and give us your support. So we're going to start with the offensive side of the football. And that's going to begin where every good team begins, and that's at the quarterback position. So there's two names that I've seen and that we got added to this transfer portal class, and that's AJ Hill and that's Braden Fuller. So Hank Hendricks is another name. He's a high school prospect, though, so we're strictly taking just transfer portal names here. And that's going to start off with AJ Hill and Braden Fuller. So AJ Hill is the four-star quarterback out of Memphis, and then Braden Fuller is a D2 quarterback from Angelo State. So when we look at these two guys, not a lot of production for AJ Hill last year. Only played in 2 games, so he was technically a red shirt. So he'll be a redshirt freshman when he joins the Hogs. And then Braden Fuller is going to be a senior, maybe even a redshirt senior. He spent a lot of time in college. He was actually up for essentially what is the Heisman in D2 in 2024. Suffered some injuries this year, so he didn't play a ton. He had around 1,000 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, and 4 picks. Not one of his best seasons, a little over 50% passing. But these two guys are going to be guys to know. Obviously, KJ Jackson is back, and he's expected, at least in my eyes, to be the starting quarterback for us. But these two guys are going to really fight for positions 2 and 3. AJ Hill is more of the highly touted guy, while Braden Fuller is more of your experienced uh, experienced guy. So these two guys are going to fill really different roles. Depending on how well we do, you may see a little bit of AJ Hill. I see if there's an injury possibility, maybe to KJ Jackson, Braden Fuller to me is probably going to be the guy that steps in early because of that experience. But both of these guys are going to really fight for this starting quarterback job. Both are going to fight for the backup job. I anticipate that there's a possibility one of these guys leaves the spring transfer window just because that's a tendency that guys have when they don't win jobs, especially if one of these guys doesn't win the backup job. So QB2, I anticipate one of these guys could leave. We'll see. AJ Hill obviously has the rapport with new head coach Ryan Silverfield. So coming in from Memphis, but that's the quarterback breakdown. It really starts with KJ Jackson being our quarterback, and these two guys are going to kind of fill in behind him. At the running back position, we look at two guys as well. Another highly touted prospect in Jasper Parker, a running back out of Michigan, and then Sutton Smith, another guy coming alongside Ryan Silverfield out of Memphis. And he was a guy who ran all over us. He had a phenomenal game against us, actually, probably his best game of the season. He was a guy 669 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, added a little bit in the passing game as well. But he's going to be a potential RB1 for us. Braylon Russell decides to come back another season. He'll be a true junior. And these two guys are going to compete really to me for RB1. Jasper Parker's another guy that could as well. I don't know as much about him. I'm not as big in the world of recruiting classes. So when he came out in 2024 or 2025, actually, he was just a freshman last year. So he'll be a redshirt freshman. I believe he only played in, actually, he played in 6 games. So he's going to be probably a true sophomore for us. 6 foot 205, a little bit bigger. While Sutton Smith's just 5'9", a buck 85. So these guys are going to be really impactful, in my opinion. These two guys are going to round out the room alongside Braylon Russell. And then if you're looking for another guy, Cam Settles is probably that fourth string guy. But I'm looking at these guys as really big names to watch this season. Sutton Smith really could be RB1, and he's got great speed, and he's a guy that really killed us. So I'm excited to see him in a Razorback uniform this year. Let's switch over to the wide receiver position. Kind of a lot of names here. I'm going to read them off real quick. Jamari Hawkins, Chris Marshall, Donovan Foppel, I'm not sure, and Jelani Watkins. So there's a lot of names there. But who do we really need to know out of this group? There's a lot of names. Let's get down to the nitty gritty and really look at who we think is going to be the best players for us. It's going to start with Jamari Hawkins. He's a guy I could see playing inside the slot, over 600 receiving yards last year, 2 touchdowns. Also coming from Ryan Silverfield's offense, which is going to be a trend we're going to see. There's a lot of guys that came in from Memphis, but he's going to be a redshirt senior. So just going to have one season with the Razorbacks, but I'm excited to see what he can do. More of a shifty guy, 5'9", 185 pounds as well. On the outside, though, we're going to see two different guys, I think, really take a hold of this position, and that's Donovan Foppel and Chris Marshall. So Foppel, 6'1", 195, Marshall, 6'3", 215. Bigger body receivers. Both had productive seasons this past year. Marshall with 574 receiving yards. Foppel with 661 and 7 touchdowns to add. So that's really big. Both mid-major transfers. Foppel out of New Mexico State and Marshall out of Boise State. But I think both of these guys can compete for those top 3 receiver positions. You know, a lot of teams, including us, play 3 receivers. I think Hawkins, Marshall, and Foppel are going to be 3 guys that you're going to see compete for those 3 positions, alongside a couple guys that came back, which is C.J. Brown, Jalen Brown, Ismail Cisse was a receiver out of Stanford that was out for the entire year last year. He's so far also on the team, and he's another guy that will compete for one of those starting 3 positions. But there's a lot of names. These 3 guys are the ones that stand out to me. Another one, the last name on this list is Jelani Watkins, a receiver at LSU. I think he's also going to be running track for the Razorbacks. 5'10", 162, was a redshirt freshman, only had 2 catches. He's a guy maybe with some Silverfield development on the offensive side of the football. He can be a guy that gets on the field. But right now, those first 3 names are the names that I'm looking at the most. Tight end position. 2 names are coming in here. I mean, that's going to be Matt Adcock out of Memphis as well. A lot of Memphis guys. And then Ty Lockwood, the tight end out of Boston College. Lockwood only had 2 catches last year. Adcock had 12 for 70 yards and 3 touchdowns. So these guys, both of them are going to be behind Jaden Platt, who's coming back for the Razorbacks, who had a phenomenal season last year. But I assume it's going to be in this order. Adcock to me could be tight end 2, Lockwood tight end 3. Adcock is a kind of a bigger guy, 6'3", 245. Lockwood, very similar size as well, 6'4", 245. And then Maddox Lassiter is a guy who's going to round out the room, who kind of played that fullback position a little bit for us last year. But I think the tight end position is pretty set to me. These 2 guys are going to be helpful to round out that room, especially alongside Platt, who had a great year last year. But I really do like this room a lot. I think these guys will be solid contributors. I don't see a ton out of them. Adcock's going to be a true senior next year, and then Ty Lockwood, a redshirt junior. So I like these names. Nothing impressive, nothing crazy. Jaden Platt's still going to be the guy, the player on the Razorbacks last year anyway. So 2 good names to know. And we're going to switch now to the offensive line, where there's a lot of names to read right there. I'm going to kind of go inside to out. So on the inside, you have Davion Weatherspoon and Malachi Breland. Those are 2 inside guys. And then on the outside, you have Bryant Williams, Terrence Roberson Jr., Josiah Clemens, and Adam Hawks. So on the inside, we have Malachi Breland, and we have Davion Weatherspoon. These are 2 guys that I really think can compete. So right now, Caden Kittler is the center, and Kobe Branham played a lot of right guard. Both of those guys are going to be back. So we really only need to fill one more inside position. And I think Davion Weatherspoon is going to be the guy that fills it. Played left guard for Ohio last year. and was a first-team All-MAC conference player, which is a big deal. He's at about 6 foot, so not a tall guy, and 303 pounds. Played in all 13 games for them this past year, and he's a guy I see just. I mean, left guard's what's open, and I think he comes in and he fills that, which is where Carmona played last year. And it's really going to be the outside where I think there's the most competition. Now, Malachi Breland is the other inside guy I mentioned out of Memphis. He's huge, 6'5", 340. I don't know if he's a guy that could kick outside. I believe he also played left guard for Memphis last year. He'll be a redshirt junior. I like him. I think he's a guy. When we had him committed and not Weatherspoon yet, I was like, all right, he's left guard. And then Weatherspoon committed a couple days ago, and he's a guy that I think is just going to win that job because of how well he played at Ohio last year. But the outside, maybe Breland finds his way there, but he's going to have to compete with a lot of other guys. And we don't return a lot of these dudes. Kavion Broussard, I think, is the only real notable name that's coming back that really even saw any sort of production last year. But he's going to have to compete with these guys. And that starts with Bryant Williams, the offensive tackle out of Louisiana, a redshirt senior, 6'7", 335 pounds. Terrence Roberson Jr., an in-state transfer from the D2 school, Washita Baptist. He was a redshirt freshman last year, 6'6", 295. Josiah Clemens, I don't anticipate him playing a ton this year. More of a depth piece. He was a true freshman last year out of Memphis, coming with Ryan Silverfield, also 6'7" and 370 pounds. And then Adam Hawks is the last guy. A redshirt freshman, played in about half of Oregon State's games at 6'5", 305. So there's a lot of names here. Who's really the best? I look at Weatherspoon as a guy who's going to start inside. Breland will be great depth on the outside. My anticipation is Bryant Williams at left tackle, Terrence Roberson Jr. at right tackle. Adam Hawkins is your swing guy. I think he'll play on either side of the football, that's left or right. And then Josiah Clemens is a depth piece. I don't think he's going to get a lot of production. I don't think he'll be on the field too much. But this is going to be a really renovated offensive line. We lose a lot of the guys. 3 of the 5 starters are gone, either due to eligibility, exhausted, or they hit their name in the transfer portal. So we were able to recoup a lot of good names. I think this is going to be a pretty solid offensive line. We'll see if it's as good as it was last year. It was definitely better last year than it was 2 years ago. And so I would love to see if we can keep up that production as well. So we're now going to switch to the defensive side of the football. And before we do, just got a little bit of video for you.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
All right. Now we're going to switch over to the defensive side of the football. A lot of names to know here as well. So we're going to start in the trenches, and we're going to start with the defensive line. 4 names that I've got down as guys who have come in and transferred. And like I've said, we're not including any guys that are high school prospects or JUCO guys. So these are going to be exclusively NCAA transfers, D1, D2, FCS. So defensive line, Hunter Osborne is the biggest name to know. One of the biggest gets I think we got in this transfer class. The defensive lineman out of Virginia, a former top prospect out of Alabama. So Alabama to Virginia. Now to us, he's going to be a true senior, 6'4", 301. He's going to probably fill in as one of those defensive tackles this season. He had 15 tackles last year, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack for one of the best teams in the ACC. Now 2 or 3 real young guys that are going to be, I think, impactful. Hopefully down the road, we'll see a lot of these guys come in, and then they transfer, and then they transfer again. So we'll see how long we have him. But Trajan Odom and Carlin Jones, both true freshmen last year. I believe Odom is going to be a redshirt freshman, and then Carlin Jones played in enough games, so he's actually going to be a true sophomore. Odom 6'3", 295, and then Carlin Jones 6'2", 310, and then the last transfer, Exadavian Sims. I hope I'm saying that right. 6'3", 305, was a redshirt freshman last year, so he's going to be a redshirt sophomore. None of these guys really had a ton of production. They didn't really play in a lot of games. But I think maybe one of them could sneak in and really play some minutes for us this year. Osborne is going to be that big time player alongside David Oke and other guys that decided to come back. Not a ton. Oke is one of them. Reginald Vaughn, one of the freshmen in last year's class. Those two are the main ones. But I think there's going to be a lot of snaps for these guys. Osborne, I think, will be a starter, but these other three guys, just because of the lack of depth, OK being really the main guy coming back from last year's roster, and he even dealt with injuries. So this was a spot where we were really weak last year. Cam Ball, David OK both got hurt for extended periods of time. And we were playing a lot of guys I think we really didn't want to play going into the season. And so I look at Odom, Jones, Sims, these guys from some highly touted programs, Ohio State, USC, Oregon. These guys are really fill in, add some depth to this defensive line. And I think that's something that even Silverfield, maybe as a not as the head coach of us last year, but as a guy, a bystander guy looking on to this program, maybe saw that we really lack defensive line depth. And I think that's something he prioritized in the portal, and he got a lot of guys I think that have potential. They're not necessarily super experienced guys. They're not outside of Osborne. They don't have a lot of snaps. They don't have a lot of reps. But these three guys, Odom, Jones, and Sims, I think are going to really provide some maybe high upside, and we can see one of these guys have a breakout season this upcoming year. I've got two edge rushers down, so I didn't just do those weren't all the defensive line. These two guys, I guess, are defensive ends, but just two of them, Steven Souls Jr., Jamonta Waller, guys that played linebacker also at their previous position. So we didn't really get out and get a ton of edge production. But Steven Souls Jr., a defensive end from Kentucky, going to be a true junior next year. He had 3.5 sacks for the Kentucky Wildcats, so that's big. And then Jamonta Waller, a redshirt freshman last year, didn't really play for them, so he's going to be a redshirt sophomore this upcoming season. But I like Souls. I think he's going to be a guy that competes. I think he's going to be a guy that has a potential to be a starting defensive end. Obviously, Quincy Rhodes Jr., an all-conference player, will be one of the defensive ends. But Charlie Collins, a guy who was in the portal and came back, is going to possibly be the other edge on the other side. But I think Steven Souls is going to have a real shot to compete. And he kind of reminds me of maybe a Philip Lee from last year, kind of an undersized DN, an edge linebacker hybrid, but a guy, a true pass rusher at heart. And I think Souls is a guy that can really have some production for us this upcoming season. At the linebacker position, man, there's so many names to know here. We have, I think, believe 5 true linebackers, and a lot of sites you're going to see Waller and Souls listed as linebackers. So many linebackers for this upcoming season. And in fact, we have a couple guys coming back as well. So Bradley Shaw, Wyatt Simmons, they're going to be back. But look at this laundry list of names right here. Kamori House, linebacker, North Carolina. Ben Bogle, linebacker, West Virginia. Phoenix Jackson out of Baylor. Jeremy Evans, also out of Baylor. And then Jaquavion Smith, a linebacker out of out of Howard. So a lot of different guys here. A lot of them undersized. So like Kamori House, only 6 foot 215. Jaquavion Smith, they've got him listed only 205 pounds. But none of these guys are over 223 pounds. So these are going to be more kind of your hybrid guys. You're honestly traditional linebacker at this point. Like your OG traditional linebacker was 6'3", 250, and now he's 6'1", 6'2" in the 220s, and that's what a lot of these guys are. And so I'm excited to see a lot of these guys this upcoming season. Kamori House, 81 tackles last year for North Carolina. Bogle, 37 from West Virginia, and then Jaquavion Smith at the FCS level had 49 tackles and 11 tackles for loss. So there's a lot of production that's coming into this room. Phoenix Jackson, even a guy who dealt with injuries last year at Baylor, but was a transfer in from Fresno State the year prior. So he's going to be a graduate player. But I like all these guys. Evans, I don't see him getting on the field too much. And even with the amount of guys we have this upcoming season, a guy like Phoenix Jackson, who's coming off injury, and a guy at the FCS level like Jaquavion Smith, I don't know how many snaps they get. We rotated a lot of linebackers last year. We played Sorey, Dix, Shaw, Simmons. There were so many different names. So I imagine a guy like Phoenix Jackson and Jaquavion Smith, they'll get on the field at some point. But I look at Kamori House and Ben Bogle, these two guys as the two prized players in this linebacker class from the transfer portal. So I like both of those names. Kamori House is one of the best transfers I think we got in this class. So I see this linebacker room, a room that I really was high on going into the season last year with Sori, with Steven Dix, with Bradley Shaw. And I look at them and I was a little disappointed with what they were able to do last season. I think Sori took a step back. I don't think Steven Dix Jr. was a great player for us last year. And then even Bradley Shaw was more of a depth piece. I think he's going to have a more highlighted role this year. But I'm excited about this transfer portal class of linebackers because I think they can provide a lot of production and maybe it's a rotation, and that's okay. I think they could still provide a lot of value for you. Now we're going to move over to the cornerback position. This defensive back room, corner safeties, we added so many dudes. So just stick with me here. We'll start with guys that I anticipate to play on either the outside or inside the slot. The first one, the prized possession of this class, is Jaheim Johnson, a corner out of Tulane. He's going to be a redshirt junior for us. He had 4 interceptions and 9 pass deflections last year. I anticipate him to be a really good player for us and a starter on the outside. Lakai Rowland is another guy I could see starting on the outside. He's going to be a true junior out of Maryland, 6'2", a buck 96. He had 3 picks for the Terrapins last year, so I think he could be a big name to see this upcoming season. And then I think there's going to be a couple of depth pieces here. So I know Shelton Lewis, Tyler Scott, these are 2 guys that could start on the inside. Lewis is out of Clemson and Scott out of Georgia State. Both of them fairly productive players in their career. Lewis played a decent bit at Clemson, not as much last year. He only played in 4 games, but he played a lot the year prior. And then Tyler Scott, 21 tackles, 3 picks. Actually, I'm reading Roland stats. Scott only had 4 tackles. We'll see. 2 games played for Georgia State last year. I think some of that due to injury as well. But and then Braden Lee, another guy coming alongside Lakai Rowland. He's also out of Maryland, a redshirt freshman last year, played in 11 games this season, 18 tackles and an interception, so that's big as well. And then the last guy on this list, got a name I'm going to definitely botch, Kiare Maglore, Kiare Maglore. I'm going to hear it when they announce it for the first time this season. I'm going to be like, wow, that was so off. But a FCS product out of West Georgia, 6'3", 200, so one of the bigger corners in this class. But he's a guy who had production at that level, 42 tackles, 2 picks, 3 pass deflections. I'm excited to see him. So I think in a room where we lost the most production, right? Jaheim Singletary transfers, Kenai Walker, Julian Neal, eligibility's done, so they're going to be in the draft. Jordan Young, same thing. A lot of our depth guys decided to transfer to other schools. So this was our biggest positions of need, was corner, and we'll get to it with safety. And so to see a lot of these guys come in, you knew this was going to be the spot where we added the most dudes. We added 6 at the corner position, and I think so far 5 at the safety position. Yeah, so 11 defensive backs right now. Maybe he even adds a couple more. I'm not sure. But Jaheim Johnson probably going to be a starter. Lakai Rowland, I think, is going to compete on the outside as well. Like I mentioned, Lewis and Scott on the inside. Maglore is definitely an outside corner. And then Braden Lee, I think, is going to be another guy who definitely can compete both inside the slot and on the outside. So I like a lot of these guys. Like I mentioned, 6 different dudes here. And I think all of them have the shot to play this upcoming season. Jaheim Johnson's the big one, but I anticipate as a fan, watch for all these names because I think they're going to be potential starters this upcoming season. Now at the safety position, 5 more names to know. A lot of good ones here as well. Christian Harrison, actually the son of Rodney Harrison, one of the standout safeties in the Hall of Fame for the New England Patriots. He's a guy, a redshirt senior, played a lot of ball. Originally at Tennessee, coming from Cincinnati, 66 tackles last year, an interception. A guy who I know his name's been thrown around to be in the slot. Also could be a starting free safety. Carter Stoutmeyer is the other guy I love in this class as well. Safety out of Colorado, played for Dion last year. Going to be a true senior this year. 38 tackles, 5 pass deflections last year. So a lot of production at the Power 5 level. Those 2 guys are the biggest names to know. John House the fourth, I think, is the 3rd name. He's going to be, to me, more of a depth piece. A redshirt senior last year from Middle Tennessee, but opted to get another year because he didn't meet the requirements for games this year due to injury. So taking a medical redshirt, 13 tackles, and a tackle for loss last year. Originally played at Vanderbilt, so he does have some SEC experience, but coming from Middle Tennessee most recently, a guy who I think is going to be a helpful veteran in the room, but I don't see him having a ton of production. And then Ian Williams, Lamarcus Hicks the second round out this room. These are guys that didn't really play at the original stops. Ian Williams was a true freshman out of Memphis, and then Lamarcus Hicks the second was a freshman out of Iowa State. So both of these guys are going to be more depth pieces. These are not big names to know. Those other three, though, Harrison, Stoutmeyer, and House, I think they're going to be the biggest names to know here for this upcoming season. And then lastly, let's give the special teams a little bit of love. Two kickers and a long snapper. So Max Gilbert, the kicker from Tennessee, a guy who's been their starter the last 2 years, 14 for 19 last year in field goals. And then Braden McAllister, 2 for 7, so not as accurate of a player, but does have a big leg. And so I'm excited to see him at least just be in that room. He could be a guy that also does kickoffs. And then Adam Johnston, a name that nobody's probably going to care about, but we're going to throw him out here on this show. Long snapper, Sacramento State, going to be a redshirt junior this upcoming season, and our potential starting long snapper. So those are all the names to know of guys that are coming in. So there was a ton of names there. In fact, there were 42 different names there that I mentioned. So many names to know. 41, sorry, as a fan. But man, there's just a lot of guys came in. And what do I think of this class? I think it's going to be the biggest question. And I like it. I don't love it, I'll be honest. But I do like it. He's got a lot of names, 41 different dudes. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the high turnover numbers. A lot of guys got into the portal. And so when that happens, you got to bring in a lot of different dudes. I thought a lot of the Memphis guys he brought in, Hill, Hawkins, Sutton Smith, Malachi Breland, I like a lot of those names. Other names that I love, Jaheim Johnson, the corner from Tulane, the defensive lineman for Virginia, Hunter Osborne, Kamori House, the linebacker. I think a lot of the offensive tackles he added, Bryant Williams, Terrence Roberson Jr., and then in the inside, Davion Weatherspoon. We'll see what the quarterback room has. I like a couple of the receivers, Marshall and Fappel, and then a couple of those safeties, Christian Harrison specifically. So I love what he added. We're going to quickly go over some of the guys that are now out. These are all just guys with scholarships. So there's definitely some walk-ons that elected to also transfer. We're going to stick to the guys I think that had the most production last season. We'll do it kind of similarly. We'll start with the offense. On the quarterback side, Trevor Jackson, Grayson Wilson are both in the portal. Neither of them really played for us last year. Wilson elected to go to Boston College, and Trevor Jackson to be a quarterback at Coastal Carolina. Running back Rodney Hill is out, a guy who played a lot of kick returner for us as well last year. Also headed to Coastal Carolina. A number of receivers were in the portal, most notably Cam Shanks, who's headed to Wake Forest. A couple of depth pieces in Crossay Johnson and Jacaden Ferguson. Crossay also going to Coastal Carolina. I don't know what all that's about. And then receiver Jacaden Ferguson, who was a decent recruit for us last year. He's headed to Kentucky. Zachary Taylor and Andy Jean are two other guys that also headed out. Nobody at the tight end position. A couple guys alongside the offensive line. The outside guys are probably the biggest losses that we had. Amarion Harris, who was a starting right tackle for us, and then his counterpart, Shaq McCroy, who was also the other guy who played right tackle. Both of them are staying in the Power 5. Harris is headed to Oklahoma, who's probably going to be a starter there. And then Shaq McCroy at North Carolina could be a potential starter for Bill Belichick. On the inside, you have a couple guys also staying in the Power Conference realm, LJ Prudhomme and Blake Cherry, both were freshmen for us last year. And a lot of these guys, when they transfer as freshmen, especially when it's pretty common to redshirt or not play a ton of games, you still have those opportunities to transfer to high-level colleges. And so I'm excited to see those guys play there. Prudhomme at Mississippi State, and then Blake Cherry to Wisconsin. And then a couple other names, Bubba Craig, a redshirt sophomore last year. And then Keyshawn Blackstock, who's trying to hope to get another year of eligibility and go play. Played defensive line for us last year, but I anticipate him trying to get back on offensive line next season. Over on the defensive side of the football, a couple big names on the D-line. Ian Giffard, headed to Texas. Danny Saley, a guy who got minutes, snaps for us last year. And then Kevin Otis, Caleb James, both transferring Kansas and Texas State, respectively. A couple of edge rushers as well. Kavion Henderson headed to Troy. Justice Boone and Ken Talley. I mean, these are guys that came in from Florida and Michigan State, respectively. Ultimately, not satisfied with what they were able to do last year and are choosing to transfer. Boone's headed to Wisconsin, and then Ken Talley to Central Florida. Linebacking room, we lost a couple names here, including our prized possession of the previous recruiting class in 2025, and that was Tavion Wallace, who's headed to Kentucky. Justin Logan, who's headed to Tennessee State, and then Andrew Harris, who came in, I believe, from UCF. He's headed out to the portal, hasn't decided where he's going quite yet. In the defensive back room, a lot of names here. The main reason we had to replace so many names. At the corner position, Akari Johnson's headed to Louisiana Tech. Jaheim Singletary, as I mentioned, is headed to Iowa State. Kayshawn Davila and Jaden Allen are headed to North Texas. Nigel Pringle, which was a weird situation. He was in the portal, then decided, I'm coming back to the Razorbacks, and then decided, actually, just kidding. I'm going to head back into the portal, and he's headed to Arizona State. Selman Bridges, another corner to know. And then at the safety position, J.J. Shelton is headed to Baylor. Taj Overton, a freshman for us last year, headed into the portal. And then Quatavius Scandrett, I don't even know if he has eligibility. He's listed as a senior, but he only played in 3 games last year, so he may be able to take a red shirt and play a transfer out of Eastern Michigan the prior year. So a lot of different names to know, similar to the guys that we're adding, just to break down a few notable names here. I really look at on the offensive side of the football, Cam Shanks was a big-time player for us last year. On the offensive line, and Marion Harris, Shaq McCroy, both of those guys headed out. But to me, I'm not really that upset with our offensive guys headed out. The biggest one to me is probably a Marion Harris, and I kind of like who we got back. So, yeah, we lose a lot of guys that aren't to the portal. So that's guys like Taylor Green, Mike Washington, Omega Blake, Fernando Carmona. Those guys, that sucks, losing a lot of those guys. But in terms of portal guys, guys that decided, you know what, we have eligibility, but we don't want to play for the Razorbacks. I didn't think we lost a ton. I didn't love Shanks. I thought he was going to be better than he was. He was not the best returner, which he was an all-conference first-team returner in the AAC last year. So a little disappointed with his production. And then on the defensive side, a little more disappointed by who elected to leave. That includes Justice Boone, Ian Giffrard. I would also throw Tavion Wallace into that category as well. Not a guy who played a ton of reps for us last year, but a guy who is more highly touted. And then just to give a special teams a little love, Scott Starzik, our starting kicker last year, is headed to LSU. And then Ashton Ngo and Zach Haber, 2 long snappers, are headed out as well. So those are all the names that are outgoing. We talked about the names that are incoming. I think more is incoming than is outgoing if we exclude the guys that are headed to the draft because their eligibility is up. And obviously Green, Washington, all those guys that I mentioned, those are big-time losses. Those are guys that we're going to hope to fill with production. But if we're just looking at transfers in, transfers out, I honestly think that we made out in this situation. I don't even love our incoming class. And I think that we have a better incoming class than an outgoing class. So I'm excited to see a lot of these guys come in next season and see their production. Just to finish out the show, we could talk about the 2 positions that I'm really looking at. Is like, hey, let's see if we can get another name in there, and that includes on the offensive side. That's the receiver position. I like some of the guys. I like Marshall. I like Hawkins. I like Fapel, but we don't return a lot of production. C.J. Brown, Jalen Brown, those are really the 2 names. And Brown's coming. Jalen Brown, I realized it both. Last name Brown. But Jalen Brown is a guy coming off injury. So kind of like last year where we had a ton of dudes that weren't going to be on the team from the previous season. We brought in a ton of transfers. We brought in Shanks. We brought in Blake. We brought in Raylan Sharp. Well, now all those guys are gone as well. And so I'm excited to see what these guys can do. But just to add another name there, I think we kind of got the big body figure out. If we can just kind of get a possession receiver or maybe even another slot guy, I think that could be really helpful. And then on the defensive side, the one position that I mentioned that I just didn't think we really had filled out yet was the edge rusher position. And I like Souls, and Waller may be a nice depth piece, but I would really love to see another edge rusher in there. I think Quincy Rhodes Jr. may have to deal with kind of the Landon Jackson effect for him, his last year at Arkansas, and that's like, hey, everybody's going to double team me. People are going to really scout me. Like last year was awesome. I had a great season, but in deciding to come back, like a lot of people are going to target me on a defensive line that doesn't have a lot of other productive players. So I'm interested to see who they put alongside Quincy Rhodes, Charlie Collins, Steven Souls Jr. Those two are the names right now that I'm thinking will be there. Um, but I'd love to see another name get in that mix. So a lot of guys have made their decisions in the portal. There's not a ton of names left, but I would love to see us add another edge rusher, and that would be a really great position to get some more depth into. So, like always, please like, share, subscribe. Check out all the content that we have here at Arkansas Voice of College Football. Comment below too. So we're obviously in more of a dead period, right? There's been a lot of transfer portal stuff, and obviously the national championship is tonight. But there's still a lot of dead time. We have until August when the season officially starts. So comment below what you're wanting to hear about going forward. I'm going to look at that, take that into account, and definitely use that as upcoming shows. But probably next week we're going to be looking in more to the high school recruits, the JUCO guys, those players that we've added, and see if any of these guys could be productive players for us in 2026. But we have live shows every week. It's going to be Mondays. It's going to be anywhere from 5 to 6 Central Time, of course. And so been off for a month, but I'm going to be back to weekly shows, and that starts today. So like always, stay tuned and stay with us this upcoming college football season. God bless. Go Hogs.